Some stories fade with time, but not this one. Years have passed, rumors have come and gone. And yet, Taehyung and Jungkook continue to capture the world's attention like no one else. Why? Because their connection has never been ordinary. From small gestures that felt intentional, to silent moments that spoke louder than words, every interaction has left fans searching for answers. Is it destiny? Friendship? Something deeper? No one knows for sure, and maybe that mystery is exactly why millions still can't look away. Tonight we're going beyond the headlines, beyond the edits, beyond the assumptions, to uncover why Taekook remains one of the most compelling stories in K-pop history. There are connections in this world that don't disappear. Even when time moves forward, even when circumstances change, even when silence becomes the only language left. Taehyung and Jungkook's story is one of those rare bonds that refuses to fade. No matter how much the world watches, questions, or tries to define it, months turned into years, the fascination surrounding them didn't weaken. It intensified. Clips resurfaced. Old interviews became newly analyzed. Fans searched for patterns, meaning, or something deeper hidden beneath casual smiles and soft glances. And the strange thing was, no matter how much time passed, there was always something. A moment, a look, a subtle interaction that reignited every discussion. It wasn't because they tried to make it noticeable. It was because their presence together carried a kind of gravity. Even in group settings, even surrounded by millions, there was always an invisible thread connecting them. Not controlling, not restrictive, just quietly present. A subtle awareness. A familiar comfort. Some people describe it as chemistry. Others call it fate. But maybe it's something simpler, an understanding that doesn't need explaining. Over time, both of them matured in ways the world could see. Their careers evolved. Their personalities sharpened. Their identities became clearer. But the way they moved around each other, carefully, gently, like there was history in every pause, remained unchanged. They weren't boys anymore. They weren't simply members of the same group. They had become individuals with separate paths, yet somehow their narratives still intersected in ways no one could ignore. There were rumors, theories, and endless debates, some harmless, some overwhelming. And through it all, they remained composed. Not defensive, not dismissive, just quiet. Because they understood something the world didn't. Not every story is meant to be explained. Some are meant to be lived. There were still moments, rare but unforgettable, where the world glimpsed the connection that never disappeared. A shared laugh during an interview. A soft glance at an award show. A quiet moment backstage when they thought no one was watching. Those small, almost insignificant seconds reminded everyone that some bonds are too real to perform, and too deep to end. And maybe that's why their story captivates millions. Not because it's perfect, not because it's defined, but because it feels unfinished. There is a sense that something is still unfolding, something unspoken, something meaningful, something only time will reveal. Their connection isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't demand attention, instead, it lingers, softly, persistently, like a song that never fully ends. And for millions around the world, that lingering feeling is enough to keep watching, waiting, and wondering. Because sometimes the best stories aren't the ones with answers, they're the ones that continue, quietly, beautifully, and endlessly, long after the page should have closed. There are turning points that are loud, dramatic, impossible to miss. And then there are turning points that happen quietly, so subtle that only those paying attention notice the shift. For Taehyung and Jungkook, the shift came gently. It wasn't one grand event. It wasn't a reveal or a confession. It was a series of small interactions, almost insignificant on their own, but together, they told a story. A look that lasted 1 second too long. A smile that felt softer than before. A moment where one reached out first without overthinking. Whyto the world. These were tiny things. Long-time observers, they were everything. It felt like the distance that once stood between them had dissolved. Not instantly, but gradually, like thawing ice finally melting. Under warmth that never truly disappeared. Fans noticed it first during a live appearance. Jungkook stood beside Taehyung, closer than expected, almost instinctively. He didn't step back, didn't hesitate. Taehyung didn't seem surprised. He simply smiled, as if that closeness had always belonged there. No words were exchanged. Yet the atmosphere shifted. People watching felt it. Not with logic, but with intuition. Something was different. Something had returned. Later that night, away from the spotlight, they found themselves alone again, just like in the beginning. No cameras. No nois. Just two people who shared more history than the world could ever fully understand. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't heavy. It was calm. Jungkook spoke first, but his voice wasn't loud. It feels easier now, he said. Taehyung nodded, his gaze gentle. That's because we stopped avoiding what was already there. Jungkook let out a small laugh, not amused but relieved. We didn't lose it. We never could, Taehyung replied softly. There was no declaration, no dramatic promise, just understanding, the kind carved through time, distance, and everything unspoken. They didn't need to define themselves, they didn't need answers, they didn't need permission. Some bonds aren't meant to be categorized, only respected. And as the night continued, the world outside kept searching for explanations, theories, labels. But inside that quiet moment, there was only truth. They were still connected, still aligned, still choosing each other, even if silently, and maybe that is why millions remain drawn to them. Because their story isn't about perfection, it's about something real, something rare, something unfinished, a connection that doesn't fade, a bond that keeps returning, a chapter that refuses to end, no matter how much time passes. Taehyung closed his eyes for a moment, taking in everything. Every sound, every breath, every heartbeat around him. The night felt heavier than before, but not in a painful way. It was as if the universe had paused just long enough for him and Jungkook to exist without expectations, without pressure, without eyes watching and waiting. Jungkook's voice was gentle, but steady. You know, sometimes I wonder if things would have been easier if we were just ordinary. No fame, no câmeras, no rumores. Taehyung let out a soft laugh. If we were ordinary, would we still have found each other? Of course, Jungkook replied immediately, without hesitation. Some people are meant to meet, no matter the world, no matter the life. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was warm, like a blanket shared between two souls who had fought storms together. Taehyung turned slightly, eyes soft. Do you ever regret anything? Jungkook thought about it. Not the polished answer, not the media-trained version, just the truth. I regret the moments when I let fear decide for me, he finally said. Fear of fans, fear of consequences, fear of ruining everything we've built. He paused, then added quietly, but I never regret us. Taehyung's gaze softened, like something inside him finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. You know what scares me? He whispered. Not the cameras, not the rumors, not even the world trying to define us. What then? Losing you. Jungkook reached out slowly, not dramatically, not like a movie, but in the simplest, most human way. His fingers brushed Taehyung's and Taehyung didn't pull away. Then don't, Jungkook said quietly. The world outside continued, cars moving, fans speculating online, the media searching for headlines. None of it mattered here. Because in that moment, under the dim light and stillness of the night, it wasn't Taehyung and Jungkook. The global icons. It was just two people, two hearts that had collided long before the world noticed. Two souls still figuring out their next chapter. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone. Taehyung closed his eyes for a moment, taking in everything. Every sound, every breath, every heartbeat around him. The night felt heavier than before, but not in a painful way. It was as if the universe had paused just long enough for him and Jungkook to exist without expectations, without pressure, without eyes watching and waiting. Jungkook's voice was gentle, but steady. You know, sometimes I wonder if things would have been easier if we were just ordinary. No fame, no câmeras, no rumores. Taehyung let out a soft laugh. If we were ordinary, would we still have found each other? Of course, Jungkook replied immediately, without hesitation. Some people are meant to meet, no matter the world, no matter the life. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was warm, like a blanket shared between two souls who had fought storms together. Taehyung turned slightly, eyes soft. Do you ever regret anything? Jungkook thought about it. Not the polished answer, not the media-trained version, just the truth. I regret the moments when I let fear decide for me, he finally said. Fear of fans, fear of consequences, fear of ruining everything we've built. He paused, then added quietly, but I never regret us. Taehyung's gaze softened, like something inside him finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. You know what scares me? He whispered. Not the cameras, not the rumors, Not even the world trying to define us. What then? Losing you. Jungkook reached out slowly, not dramatically, not like a movie, but in the simplest, most human way. His fingers brushed Taehyung's and Taehyung didn't pull away. Then don't, Jungkook said quietly. The world outside continued, cars moving, fans speculating online, the media searching for headlines. None of it mattered here. Because in that moment, under the dim light and stillness of the night, it wasn't Taehyung and Jungkook. The global icons. It was just two people. Two hearts that had collided long before the world noticed. Two souls still figuring out their next chapter. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone. Days passed, but the moment on the rooftop lingered in their minds like a quiet echo, soft yet impossible to ignore. It didn't change everything overnight, but something beneath the surface felt different now. Their conversations flowed more openly, their silences felt more meaningful, and the unspoken barrier between them seemed thinner than ever. But reality had a way of interrupting softness. One morning, Jungkook woke up to notifications flooding his phone, headlines, fan theories, speculation sparked by a single blurry photo someone had taken that night. It wasn't clear. It didn't show faces, just silhouettes, close enough to raise questions. Still, the internet didn't need clarity to create a story. Jungkook stared at the screen, jaw tense, breath heavier than usual. He wasn't scared, just tired. Tired of everything being watched. Tired of every natural moment turning into evidence or accusation. When Taehyung walked into the practice room later, he already knew. He had seen the same headlines, the same theories. Yet he didn't greet Jungkook with panic. Instead, he gave him a quiet look of understanding, like he knew exactly what was running through Jungkook's mind. "You okay?" Taehyung asked softly. Jungkook nodded, though his shoulders stayed tense. "Yeah, just the noise gets loud." Taehyung sat beside him, leaving barely a breath of space between them. "We've dealt with louder." Jungkook exhaled, a tiny smile tugging at his lips. True. But even with reassurance, the weight in the room didn't disappear. They rehearsed, practiced choreography, laughed with the others, but beneath all of it, a silent question pulsed. How long could they live between two worlds, the one they owed to millions, and the one that belonged only to them? Later that evening, after practice ended and the others left, Jungkook lingered. Taehyung noticed. "Talk to me," he said quietly. Jungkook hesitated, then finally spoke. "I don't regret anything we said, or anything we've felt. But sometimes, I wonder if the world will ever allow us to just exist." Taehyung's expression softened. Not with sadness but with certainty. "We don't need permission to be human." Jungkook looked at him then. Not as someone drowning in expectations, but as someone finally reaching the surface. "Being with you doesn't feel like pressure," he murmured. "It feels like breathing." Taehyung swallowed, eyes glimmering with emotion he didn't try to hide this time. "And you remind me I'm allowed to feel." Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was full. A silence filled with things too fragile to say aloud yet too real to deny. Finally, Taehyung stood and reached out his hand, not in a dramatic gesture, but in a simple, steady one. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's not spend tonight worrying about what the world thinks." Jungkook looked at the offered hand, a symbol of something unlabeled but undeniable. He took it. Not because it was easy, but because it was real, and as their fingers intertwined, one quiet truth settled between them. The world could speculate, misunderstand, project and assume, but only they knew the story behind the moments no camera could capture, and that story wasn't over. Not even close.